We're here at the National Credit Union Administration headquarters with NCUA board member Michael Fryzel after the February board meeting. I want to start by asking you about the rule that was approved, the voluntary liquidation of credit unions. How will this change what has been the status quo for credit unions?
Well, as you heard, Nick, it was from 1993, I believe, was the last time this rule was even looked at. And again, it's basically just a cleanup type rule, making it easier for credit unions to comply with the provisions of voluntary liquidation should they choose to do so. So basically, it's really a simple rule, using different types of media to correspond with your members now, a lot easier to get things done and just bringing it up to date.
The Share Insurance Fund financial report was presented at the meeting. What do you think are the most important aspects of the report that credit unions should know about?
That they have a strong insurance fund, that it's being managed properly, that the investments are being made to make sure that there's proper liquidity for that fund, always to have it available should there be a need for it, and that NCUA is doing everything it can to make sure that that fund remains the strongest in the industry.
You mentioned that there's been a transfer from the fund to the corporate stabilization fund. Could you talk about the effect that's going to have for credit unions?
Well, here again, it was a transfer of approximately $95 million from the Share Insurance Fund into the Corporate Stabilization Fund, which basically again means that anything that credit unions are going to have to pay for in the future to reduce the debt of the corporate credit union crisis is going to be a lot less, if perhaps, and maybe no other assessment again in the future for this. So every dollar that comes into that fund, be it through this transfer or through the settlements that we receive from the lawsuits that we have initiated, means credit unions are going to have to pay less towards that problem.
Now, the NCUA recently updated the corporate assessment estimates and came away with a negative number. Does this mean going forward credit unions will receive a rebate for this year or in the future?
Well, from day one, Nick, I've always said that credit unions should not look forward to receiving any money back. Now, as time goes on, again, this is a point of time that we look at these numbers and we say, okay, things are going well. And conceivably, there may not have to be any more assessments. All this will then be paid off. And maybe, sometimes a long way into the future, there may be some money that's still in the fund that we don't have to use anymore, and it will go back to credit unions. I don't think they should anticipate ever receiving anything back, but if they do, then it's just going to be something added advantage of saying, hey, there's more money here than we need. It goes back to the credit unions as it should.
Now, I want to ask you about a rule that was proposed in the past, the home-based credit union rule. I understand some comments have come through for that rule. Have you seen any of the comment letters, and what do you think about that rule going forward when it would be possibly finalized?
Nick, there have been a lot of comment letters about it. Every one of them that I've read has been a negative comment in regards to saying this rule is not good in its present format, which is what I said at the board meeting when I voted against this rule. I think that changes should be made to it. Unless changes are made to it, that I will not be supporting this rule. I still do not at this point think it is a good rule. It is something that we are infringing upon these credit unions who are doing a good job. When we talk about the efforts of taking exams out of the credit unions, that's a good aspect of it. If we're talking about public safety for our examiners, which is preeminent, that we should be very, very concerned about. But in regards to saying to credit unions, you must move out of this home, we're going to give you only so many years to have a commercial space, that's wrong. That should not be done, and it needs to be looked at again.
Can it be adjusted in some way to gain your support, or is it just the premise of it that you disagree with?
I disagree with the fact that we're mandating credit unions, which started in the homes, which are operating out of homes, which have no complaints from their members about the fact that they have to go to these homes to conduct their business, for us to say to them, take it out of there. That's what how credit unions started. That's what credit unions still have as a basic function to serve their members. These home-based credit unions, as far as I know, are serving their members well. I don't think NCUA should be telling them you have to move out of there and into a commercial space. Many of them can't afford it. Many of them would have to go out of business. That's not our job. They're running good credit unions. As long as they're within the regulations and the law, they should be allowed to continue to doing that. That would have to be changed before I'd even consider supporting the rule.
Now, as you know, there was a webinar recently with Chairman Debbie Matz and also Director of the CFPB, Richard Cordray, talking about specifically the mortgage rules that have gone into effect, the QM rule and the ability to repay rule. Do you think those rules could, affect the lending practices at credit unions and possibly cause them to not offer non-QMs anymore?
Some credit unions have said yes, they would not offer those loans anymore should these rules become effective, should they have to comply with them. And this is the reason, Nick, that we have our own Consumer Protection Office in NCUA, is to continue this dialogue with the CFPB. Chairman Matz has a good relation with Director Cordray. They continue to have these webinars to inform credit unions as to what is going on, what's out there, and we continue to talk to them about the fact that some of these things shouldn't apply to credit unions. We need to have them changed in order for the credit unions to continue to making these loans. Yes, that is a possibility that credit unions would stop making those type of loans, and that's something we have to work with the CFPB to make sure it doesn't happen.
And I also want to ask you about the diversity standards, the joint diversity standards that have been proposed. The comment period ended for those. Some of the trade organizations have expressed some concerns about manual reporting requirements being a burden on credit unions. Do you support those standards, or are there some things that you would like to see changed?
Well, Nick, this is all in the very early stages. This has been mandated by Dodd-Frank. All the 6 financial regulatory agencies had to come together and put together some type of package for consideration as to how we comply with what's required by the Act. I think that we've gotten a lot of input from the leagues and from interested individuals. I know that our people here have had numerous meetings with them to get input, to provide to the other regulatory agencies as to how this should be constructed. I think, again, it's in the early stages. This is not going to be finalized. We're not going to tell credit you must do this. It's not going to be part of the exam. This is an ongoing process, and I think there's going to be a lot more changes to it before it actually becomes something that credit unions are going to have to look at and have to be really consider.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your insight into these issues affecting credit unions.
Thank you, Nick, and hope to see you at the GAC next week.
Yes, nonstop action
Absolutely.
At the GAC.
It's always good. Always a good time.
You're going to be on a panel, correct?
I'm going to be speaking on Tuesday at, I believe it's approximately 9:30. I hope everyone comes to the hall to hear what I have to say. They may not be interested, but at least perhaps I'll say a few things that might spark their interest.
Sneak peek into the speech?
We're going to talk about challenges that credit unions are facing and how they should meet them, and relate those to the challenges that forebears or our forefathers met when they came to this country and how they dealt with them.
Okay, great. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks a lot.